Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, they just played me? Maybe they twisted your words. Maybe they ignored you on purpose. Maybe they made you doubt yourself, question yourself, overthink everything. And the worst part, you didn't even realize it was happening until it was too late. Most people think manipulation is loud. It's not. It's subtle. It's quiet. It's psychological. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The moment you react emotionally, you hand them control. But what if I told you there are 6 precise steps used by elite negotiators, interrogators, and high-stakes communicators that instantly shut down mind games? No arguing, no shouting, no explaining yourself. Just calm, controlled dominance. Today, you're going to learn exactly how to handle people who play games with you, so they never try it again. Stay with me, because once you understand this, you'll never see conversations the same way again. Most people lose the moment a psychological game begins because they don't realize they're in one. They think they're just having a conversation. They think it's just a misunderstanding. They think they need to explain themselves better, defend themselves harder, prove their point one more time. But in reality, someone else has already shifted the frame. Someone else has already taken control of the emotional atmosphere. And the moment you start reacting instead of observing, you step onto a chessboard you didn't even know existed. Recognizing the game before you react is the difference between being controlled and being in control. You have to understand something about human behavior. Not everyone communicates to connect. Some people communicate to dominate. Some want attention, some want validation, some want leverage, and some want chaos because chaos makes them feel powerful. When they sense that you are emotionally invested, that you care deeply about the outcome, they may, consciously or unconsciously, use that against you. The game often starts subtly. It might be a comment designed to provoke you, a backhanded compliment, a sarcastic remark, a passive-aggressive joke that makes you feel small. It might be silence, sudden withdrawal, delayed replies, emotional distance meant to trigger anxiety in you. It might be contradiction. They deny things they clearly said, twist your words, or change the story so you feel confused and unstable. It might be urgency. Decide now or lose everything, pushing you to act before you think. These are not random behaviors. These are tactics, sometimes intentional, sometimes driven by insecurity, fear, or ego, but they all have one thing in common. They pull you into a reactive state. And reaction is the gateway to manipulation. When you react, you stop thinking strategically. Your heart rate increases. Your brain shifts from reasoning to survival mode. You start talking faster, explaining more, defending yourself, justifying your feelings. And the person who caused that reaction now has leverage. So the first discipline is awareness. You must train yourself to notice patterns instead of getting lost in emotions. Ask yourself, why does this conversation feel different? Why do I suddenly feel the urge to defend myself? Why am I feeling pressure, confusion, or insecurity right now? That feeling is often the signal that a game is being played. Games thrive on your lack of awareness. The moment you see the pattern, the moment you label it in your mind, this is a power move. This is manipulation. This is a test. You step out of the emotional fog and into a strategic mindset. And here's the critical insight. You don't need to accuse them. You don't need to confront them immediately. You just need to see it clearly. Clarity is power. Imagine watching a magician. When you don't know the trick, it feels like magic. When you understand the mechanics, the illusion disappears. Psychological games are the same. Once you see the mechanism, it loses its power over you. For example, when someone uses silence to control you, you stop interpreting it as rejection or abandonment. You see it as a tactic. When someone gaslights you, you stop questioning your memory and start noticing the inconsistency in their behavior. When someone provokes you, you recognize the bait and choose not to bite. Recognition creates distance. Distance creates control. You begin to see conversations as systems of influence rather than emotional storms. You notice who talks more, who interrupts, who frames the narrative, who tries to define reality. You observe body language, tone shifts, timing, and patterns. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you conscious. Most people live in autopilot. They feel, react, and speak without reflection. You are learning to slow down, to zoom out, to watch the interaction like an analyst instead of a participant caught in the moment. And this is where real power begins. Because when you recognize the game, you realize something liberating. You don't have to play. You are not obligated to respond immediately. You are not obligated to justify yourself. You are not obligated to explain your feelings to someone who is not operating in good faith. You get to choose your response. Recognition also protects your identity. When someone manipulates you, their goal is often to redefine who you are in that moment. The guilty one, the desperate one, the needy one, the irrational one. If you don't recognize the game, you may accept that identity and start behaving accordingly. But when you recognize it, you separate who you are from what they are trying to make you feel. You think, this is their tactic, not my truth. You maintain your internal stability while the external situation tries to shake you. This is psychological resilience, and it's not about paranoia. Not everyone is manipulative. Not every disagreement is a power game. But when you train your awareness, you develop a radar for patterns that feel off. You learn to trust subtle signals in your mind and body that tell you when something isn't just a normal conversation. You also learn to observe yourself. Are you over-explaining? Are you feeling unusually anxious? Are you trying too hard to win approval? These are signs that the game is working on you. Recognition shifts you from participant to strategist. It's the moment you stop being a pawn and start being a player who can choose whether to even sit at the table. And the paradox is this. The more aware you are, the less you need to fight, the less you react, the less power they have. Silence becomes a tool. Pause becomes a weapon. Observa. Sian becomes dominance. So before you speak, before you react, before you defend yourself, recognize the game, see the pattern, name the tactic in your mind, create psychological distance, because once you see the game for what it is, you are no longer trapped inside it. You are standing above it. The moment someone tries to provoke you, they're testing something far deeper than your patience. They're testing your emotional discipline, because if they can make you feel angry, insecure, desperate, defensive, they can steer you. Emotion is leverage, reaction is surrender. Staying emotionally neutral is not about being cold or robotic. It's about being intentional. It's about refusing to let someone else hijack your internal state. When someone throws bait at you, an insult, a sarcastic comment, a manipulative silence, a sudden accusation, the most powerful move is not to strike back. It's to slow down. Think about how predators hunt. They provoke movement. They wait for reaction. In human interactions, it's no different. A manipulator wants you to move first. They want you to talk more, explain more, justify more, defend more. They want you to break your composure so they can read you, push you, and control the direction of the conversation. When you stay emotionally neutral, you become unpredictable, and unpredictability is power. Neutrality begins with a pause, a deliberate, conscious pause. Someone says something designed to sting. Your instinct is to fire back instantly. Instead, you breathe. You count a second or two. You let the words land without letting them sink into your identity. That pause does something extraordinary. It interrupts the emotional loop. Inside your brain, emotion travels faster than logic. Anger, fear, embarrassment, they rise instantly. But reason takes a few seconds to catch up. That pause is where your power lives. It's where you choose who you're going to be in that moment. You are not your first reaction. You are the person who decides what happens next. Emotional neutrality doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't display or act on those feelings automatically. It's the difference between feeling a wave and being drowned by it. You let the wave pass while you stay standing. When someone realizes they can't trigger you easily, something shifts. They feel it. Most people subconsciously gauge how much control they have over others by how quickly they can get a reaction. If they see your face change, your voice rise, your posture tighten, they know they touched something. And once they find that button, they'll press it again and again. But when they throw a verbal grenade and you just look at them calmly, maybe with a neutral expression, maybe with a quiet breath, it creates psychological discomfort. They expected drama. They expected defense. They expected emotional chaos. Instead, they get silence and control. That silence is loud. Neutrality also changes the power dynamic of the conversation. When someone is emotional and you are calm, the room feels different. People naturally perceive the calm person as more in control, more confident, more authoritative. Even if you're internally processing a lot, your external composure sends a message, you don't control me. And that message is deeply unsettling to someone who relies on manipulation. This is especially important in high-stakes situations, conflicts, negotiations, relationships, workplaces. When emotions spike, most people lose their strategic thinking. They say things they regret. They reveal insecurities. They give away information. They escalate situations unnecessarily. Staying emotionally neutral keeps your mind clear. It allows you to listen not just to words, but to subtext. You begin to hear what they're really saying beneath the surface. You notice inconsistencies, pressure points, hidden motives. It turns conversation into information. To cultivate this, you have to train your internal dialogue. When you feel the emotional surge, you label it. I feel anger. I feel defensive. I feel anxious. Labeling emotions creates distance. It reminds you that emotions are signals, not commands. Then you redirect your focus. You pay attention to your breathing. You notice the other person's tone, posture, timing. You observe instead of reacting. This observer mindset is what separates professionals from amateurs, leaders from followers, strategists from reactors. Neutrality also protects your dignity. When you react emotionally, you often reveal more than you want. You might raise your voice, insult back, justify yourself too much, or appear needy. Later, you replay the conversation and wish you had stayed composed. Composure is irreversible power. Once you lose it, it's hard to regain. Once you keep it, people treat you differently. There's another layer to emotional neutrality. It forces the other person to show their hand. If they're manipulating, provoking, or testing you, your calmness often escalates their behavior. They push harder. They reveal more. They expose themselves. You, on the other hand, remain in control, gathering information, deciding your next move. This doesn't mean you never express emotion. It means you choose when and how. You respond, not react. You decide the tone, the timing, the intensity. You are deliberate. Think of emotional neutrality as a shield. It doesn't stop you from feeling. It stops others from steering your feelings. And here's the deeper truth. Emotional neutrality is a form of self-respect. You are telling yourself, my peace is not for sale. My reactions are not for rent. You don't get to control my internal world. That mindset changes everything. When you master this step, you realize how many conflicts were fueled by impulsive reactions, how many arguments escalated because someone couldn't stay calm, how many relationships deteriorated because emotions controlled decisions. Neutrality doesn't make you passive. It makes you strategic. It allows you to choose confrontation when it's necessary and silence when it's more powerful. It allows you to speak firmly without shouting, to disagree without attacking, to walk away without drama. And perhaps most importantly, it gives you internal freedom. You're no longer a puppet to other people's moods, comments, or tactics. You're grounded, you're centered, you're sovereign. So when they throw the bait, the insult, the guilt trip, the silent treatment, the sudden pressure, you don't bite, you breathe, you observe, you stay neutral, and in that neutrality you quietly take control of the entire situation. Once you've recognized the game and mastered emotional neutrality, something powerful happens. You stop playing defense. You stop reacting. You stop being pushed around emotionally. Now you're in a position to flip the power dynamic, not with aggression, not with ego, but with precision and control. Power in conversations is not about volume, dominance, or intimidation. It's about who defines reality, who sets boundaries, and who decides the direction of the interaction. Steps 2, 3, and 4 are about taking that control back, calmly, intelligently, and decisively. The first move is to ask calm, direct questions. Most people think questions are a sign of weakness. They think asking questions means you're unsure or submissive. That's a misunderstanding. In reality, questions are one of the most powerful tools in human communication. They force clarity. They shift the burden of explanation. They expose inconsistencies. They slow down manipulative momentum. When someone plays games, they often rely on ambiguity, vague statements, half-truths, emotional accusations with no specifics. They want you confused, defensive, and guessing. Questions cut through that fog. You don't argue with their statement. You don't defend yourself immediately. You simply ask, what do you mean by that? Can you give me a specific example? Why is this important to you right now? What outcome are you looking for here? You ask with a neutral tone. No sarcasm, no hostility, just clarity. This does several things at once. It forces them to articulate their intentions. It reveals whether they are acting in good faith. It slows down emotional escalation. And most importantly, it shifts the frame. Instead of you being on trial, they now have to explain themselves. Manipulation thrives in the shadows. Questions turn on the lights. The second move is setting clear boundaries. Boundaries are where many people fail. Not because they don't have them, but because they're afraid to enforce them. They fear conflict. They fear rejection. They fear being labeled difficult. So they tolerate behavior they shouldn't. But boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about defining what you will and will not accept. When someone crosses a line, you don't explode. You don't lecture. You don't threaten. You state your boundary simply and clearly. I'm not okay with that. That doesn't work for me. I'm not going to continue this conversation if it stays like this. No apology, no justification, no emotional charge. Boundaries are statements of fact. They describe your limits, not their character. And here's the key. Boundaries only work when they are followed by consistent action. If you say you will disengage and then you stay, you teach people your boundaries are negotiable. Consistency creates credibility. Credibility creates power. When people realize that your boundaries are real, predictable, and enforced, they stop testing you. They may not like it, but they respect it. And respect is far more powerful than approval. The third move is mirroring and redirecting. This is subtle, and it's extremely effective. Mirroring means calmly reflecting someone's behavior or words back to them, without judgment, without insult, without emotion. You're not attacking them, you're showing them themselves. You say you want honesty, but you avoid answering direct questions. You're asking for respect, but you're using disrespectful language. You're saying this is about trust, but your actions are creating mistrust. You're not arguing, you're stating observations. This creates cognitive dissonance. Most people don't like seeing the gap between what they say and what they do, and when you point it out calmly without aggression, it's hard for them to dismiss you as emotional or irrational. Mirroring also disrupts manipulation. If someone is projecting, blaming, or deflecting, you bring the focus back to the pattern. You redirect the conversation from emotion to behavior, from accusation to reality. It's a psychological judo move. You use their own words and actions as the leverage. Together, these three steps, questions, boundaries, mirroring, shift the power dynamic. You are no longer the one being pushed. You are no longer reacting blindly. You are shaping the conversation, and something interesting happens when you do this consistently. People adjust their behavior around you. They think before they speak. They choose their words more carefully. They sense that games don't work with you. That's real influence, flipping the power. Dynamic doesn't mean dominating others. It means refusing to be dominated. It means communicating from a place of clarity, self-respect, and strategic awareness. It means you are present, composed, and grounded in your values. You're not trying to win arguments. You're establishing reality. And once you establish reality, you control the frame of the interaction. This approach also changes how you see yourself. You stop feeling like a victim of other people's moods. You stop feeling trapped in conversations. You realize you have options in every interaction. You can ask, you can set limits, you can reflect, you can disengage. That sense of agency is powerful. It builds confidence that is not loud, not flashy, but deeply rooted. So when someone tries to pull you into their game, you don't get dragged. You don't escalate emotionally. You calmly take the steering wheel. You ask, you define, you reflect, and in doing so, you flip the entire power dynamic. Without raising your voice, without losing your composure, without ever playing their game on their terms, at some point you realize something that changes everything. Not every situation deserves your energy, and not every person deserves access to your inner world. That realization is the beginning of detachment. And detachment is one of the most powerful psychological moves you can make. When people play games, they are not just trying to control the conversation, they are trying to control the story inside your head. They want you to see yourself through their lens, confused, needy, wrong, inferior, desperate for their approval. If you stay emotionally entangled, you start living inside their narrative. Detachment is how you step out of that story and write your own. To detach does not mean to stop caring about everything. It means you choose where your care goes. It means you refuse to let someone else's tactics dictate your emotional state, your self-worth, or your identity. When someone manipulates you, the natural instinct is to chase clarity. You want them to understand you. You want to correct the misunderstanding. You want to prove your intentions. You want closure, validation, or fairness. But chasing clarity from someone who is playing games often keeps you trapped. They benefit from your engagement. They benefit from your emotional investment. They benefit from your need for resolution. Detachment cuts that supply. It starts internally. You remind yourself, I do not need this person to define me. I do not need their approval to validate my experience. I do not need to convince someone who is not acting in good faith. You step back mentally. You observe the situation as if you were watching it from the outside. You notice your urge to explain, to defend, to chase, and instead of following that urge, you let it pass. This is reclaiming your narrative. Your narrative is the story you tell yourself about who you are, what is happening, and what it means. When someone manipulates you, they try to rewrite that story. They might make you feel like the problem, like you're too sensitive, too demanding, too dramatic, too quiet, too much, or not enough. Detachment is saying, that is your story, this is mine. You decide what their behavior means. You decide what you will internalize and what you will discard. You decide how much of your mental real estate they are allowed to occupy. Reclaiming your narrative also means choosing where your focus goes. Instead of replaying the conversation, analyzing every word and trying to decode their motives, you redirect your attention to what matters to you, your goals, your growth, your peace, your purpose. You take your power back from rumination, because rumination is another game. It's the aftershock of manipulation. It keeps you mentally stuck, emotionally drained, and energetically tied to someone who may not even be thinking about you anymore. Detachment frees you from that loop. You begin to see interactions as data, not destiny. Someone behaves poorly, that's info. Armation, someone manipulates, that's insight into their character and limitations. You don't turn it into a verdict on your worth. You keep your identity intact. There is also a strategic side to detachment. When you emotionally detach, you become harder to predict and harder to control. Manipulators rely on patterns. They rely on knowing what will trigger you, what will pull you back in, what will make you chase. When you detach, those levers stop working. You respond less, you explain less, you justify less. You become selective. You choose when to engage and when to withdraw. You choose when to speak and when silence is more powerful. You choose when to invest and when to walk away. And walking away is often the most underestimated power move. Not every conflict needs resolution. Not every relationship needs closure. Not every misunderstanding needs correction. Sometimes the strongest statement is absence. Sometimes the clearest boundary is distance. Sometimes the loudest message is your refusal to participate. Detachment also deepens your self-trust. Instead of outsourcing your emotional stability to others, you become your own anchor. You validate your own experiences. You honor your own perceptions. You trust your instincts when something feels off. You stop asking, am I overreacting? And start asking, is this aligned with my values and boundaries? That shift is profound. Reclaiming your narrative also means rewriting how you see the situation. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who was played, you see yourself as someone who learned. Instead of seeing the interaction as a loss, you see it as intelligence gained. Instead of seeing the other person as powerful, you see their tactics as predictable patterns. You move from victimhood to authorship, and authorship is power. You are no longer the character in someone else's script. You are the writer, the director, the editor of your own story. You decide the themes, the tone, the direction. Detachment doesn't mean you become indifferent to life. It means you become intentional about what shapes you. When you detach and reclaim your narrative, you walk into conversations differently. You are less reactive, less needy, less defensive. You are more grounded, more observant, more centered. People feel that shift. They sense that you are not easily shaken, not easily hooked, not easily controlled. And that changes how they treat you. More importantly, it changes how you treat yourself. You stop giving people the power to rewrite who you are with a few words or behaviors. You stop letting external chaos create internal chaos. You become steady, self-defined, and internally anchored. That is psychological independence. So when the games continue, and they will, you don't get pulled back into the drama. You detach, you observe, and you return to your narrative, your purpose, your center. You don't chase clarity from chaos. You don't seek validation from manipulation. You don't sacrifice peace for explanation. You choose yourself. You choose your story. You choose your direction. And in that choice, you take back the deepest level of power anyone can have, control over how they see themselves and their world. There is a level of power that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need volume, aggression, or dominance displays. It doesn't argue to be seen. It doesn't chaz to be respected. It simply exists, and people feel it the moment you enter a room. That is quiet authority. Leading with quiet authority is the final step, because it's what remains when you've mastered everything else. You've recognized the game. You've stayed emotionally neutral. You've flipped the power dynamic with clarity and boundaries. You've detached and reclaimed your narrative. Now, you no longer need to prove anything. Your presence speaks before your words do. Quiet authority starts internally. It's not about how others perceive you. It's about how you perceive yourself. When you are grounded in who you are, when your values are clear, when your boundaries are non-negotiable, your behavior changes. You don't rush. You don't over-explain. You don't try to win every argument. You don't seek validation through noise. You move with intention. And intention is magnetic. People with quiet authority speak less, but when they speak, others listen. Their words are measured, deliberate, and precise. They don't fill silence out of discomfort. They let silence work for them. They understand that every word carries weight, and weight increases when words are scarce. In conversations, quiet authority looks like calm eye contact, relaxed posture, steady tone. It looks like listening fully before responding. It looks like answering directly, without emotional excess or unnecessary justification. It looks like saying, "This is how it is," and moving on without needing agreement or applause. This kind of authority disrupts manipulators. They are used to emotional reactions, defensive explanations, dramatic energy. Quiet authority gives them nothing to push against. There is no chaos to exploit, no insecurity to trigger, no urgency to leverage. It's like trying to punch fog. There's nothing to grab. Quiet authority also comes from consistency. When your behavior aligns with your words over time, people learn that you are predictable in the best way. Your yes means yes. Your no means no. Your boundaries don't shift based on mood or pressure. Your values are not negotiable depending on who is watching. Consistency creates trust. Trust creates influence. Influence creates authority. But this authority is not forced. It's earned through coherence between who you are, what you say, and what you do. There is also a deep psychological component. Humans are wired to read subtle cues. Tone, posture, pacing, eye contact, timing, these communicate far more than words. Quiet authority masters these signals. The calm person in the room often becomes the center of gravity, even if they say very little. Think about the difference between someone who is loud and reactive versus someone who is calm and measured. The loud person may dominate attention, but the calm person often dominates respect. When decisions matter, people look to the one who seems most stable, most grounded, most controlled. That is the person with quiet authority. Leading with quiet authority also means you don't chase power, you embody it. You don't need to correct everyone. You don't need to win every debate. You don't need to control every narrative. You choose your battles, your words, and your energy with precision. You understand that power is not in constant engagement, it is in selective engagement. Sometimes you speak, sometimes you observe, sometimes you walk away. Each choice is intentional. Quiet authority also means you are comfortable with not being understood by everyone. You don't over-explain your motives to people who are not aligned with your values. You don't try to convince manipulators of your integrity. You let your behavior speak over time. This is especially powerful in environments where people test boundaries. Workplaces, relationships, negotiations. When someone realizes you are not easily influenced, not easily pressured, not easily provoked, they adjust their behavior around you. You become a reference point, a standard, a stabilizing force. And here's the paradox. The less you seek dominance, the more naturally dominant you become. Quiet authority also requires internal discipline. It's easy to stay calm when things are calm. It's much harder to stay calm when someone is disrespectful, manipulative, or provocative. Quiet authority means you regulate yourself regardless of the external chaos. You don't let their behavior dictate your character. You don't let their tactics rewrite your standards. You don't let their emotions control your actions. You stay centered. This doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It means when you confront it, you do so with composure, clarity, and firmness, without losing yourself in the process. You don't escalate to match their energy. You elevate to surpass it. Leading with quiet authority also changes how you make decisions. You don't rush. Why? Oh, don't succumb to pressure tactics. You take time, gather information, and decide based on principles rather than impulses. People feel that you are not easily swayed, and that makes your decisions carry weight. There is also humility in quiet authority. You don't need to remind people of your status, knowledge, or power. You don't need to dominate conversations with stories of your achievements. You let others speak. You listen. You observe. And when you contribute, it's meaningful. This combination of confidence and humility is rare and powerful. Ultimately, quiet authority is the external expression of internal sovereignty. It is what happens when you are no longer controlled by fear, ego, or the need for validation. You are comfortable with yourself, aligned with your values, and clear in your boundaries. When you walk into a room with that mindset, you don't need to announce anything. People feel it. And when someone tries to play games with you, they sense something different. They sense that you are not easily moved, that you are not emotionally available for manipulation, that you are not seeking their approval. That realization alone changes the dynamic. You don't dominate them. You outgrow the game. And that is the highest form of power. Not control over others, but control over yourself, expressed with quiet, unshakable authority. At the end of the day, this is not about winning conversations. It's about winning control over yourself. People will test you. They will push boundaries. They will play games, manipulate, provoke, and try to pull you into emotional chaos. You cannot stop them from trying, but you can stop them from succeeding. The moment you recognize the game, you wake up. The moment you stay emotionally neutral, you take your power back. The moment you ask questions, set boundaries, and mirror reality, you flip the dynamic. The moment you detach, you reclaim your story. And the moment you lead with quiet authority, you become someone who cannot be controlled. This is not about becoming cold. This is about becoming disciplined. This is not about dominating others. This is about mastering yourself. Because the strongest people in any room are not the loudest. They are the calmest, the ones who don't react, the ones who don't chase, the ones who don't need to prove anything. They observe, they decide, they move with intention. So the next time someone tries to play games with you, remember this. You don't have to play. You don't have to react. You don't have to explain. You already know the steps, and once you apply them, you will notice something powerful. People stop testing you. They stop manipulating you. They start respecting you, not because you demanded it, but because your presence commanded it. Master your reactions. Master your boundaries. Master your narrative. And when you master yourself, no one else can control you again.